The girl hiding in my walls. For the past couple of weeks now, I've been noticing a few odd things in my apartment. It started off with just food mysteriously disappearing from my refrigerator and pantry while I'd be away at work. I didn't think much of it at the time, since every now and then I'd lose track of my daily eating habits due to my busy schedule, so I simply brushed it off. Eventually, though, it didn't stop there. Almost every night, I could have sworn I could hear shuffling sounds coming from within the walls, and sometimes, when I got home late from work, I'd find both my computer and TV turned on, even when I distinctly remembered turning them off before I left. Strangely, the TV would always be turned to the local news, and my computer's search history would show several results for nearby takeout restaurants. Needless to say, I was starting to freak out a bit. The building I lived in had tight security. It even had officers frequently patrolling the area, and it was located in a part of the city where crime was pretty scarce. Considering that I'd given a couple of my friends copies of my apartment key to make sure that I wouldn't misplace them, which I so often do, I thought perhaps maybe one of them was trying to mess with me. I was eager to get to the bottom of this, so I asked either of them if they were the culprit. However, they both blatantly denied it. This, of course, put me on edge, so I asked my landlord to check the security footage of my floor for any suspicious activity. He immediately began searching through 2 weeks of recorded footage, looking for any unfamiliar faces entering my apartment. He finished his investigation the following week and said he found nothing out of the ordinary. "There's nothing to worry about," he assured me. "It's probably all in your head, man." At that time, I was considering the possibility that maybe he was right. Being a domestic abuse lawyer, I've had to deal with a lot of stressful cases and work overwhelmingly long hours. Perhaps the numerous caffeine-fueled nights and constant headaches were starting to get to me. On one particularly snowy day, I was coming down with a nasty cold and had to call in sick for the next few days. Despite having to reluctantly waste some of my days off on such a gloomy occasion, I was still glad to be temporarily free from my hectic obligations. It was around 7:30 and I was getting really tired. I had finally made it near my apartment on the 6th floor. I had just gotten back from picking up some remedies at Walmart and was anticipating a nice long night of peace and relaxation. Just as I stood in front of the door, I immediately heard a faint shuffling in the distance. My eyes scanned the hallways for any signs of life. Nothing. Suddenly, I could hear footsteps quickly creaking on a wooden surface. After listening in closely, I made a chilling realization of where the footsteps were coming from. Inside my apartment. This couldn't have been one of my friends, as I had recently changed the lock on my door due to all the strange things that had been happening. A sudden chill went up my spine because I knew right then and there that an intruder had somehow broken in. At that moment, I felt really uneasy. I wanted to run downstairs and call for help, but I knew if I left the hallway at this point, the intruder would definitely make a break for it. Being the naive young woman that I was determined to go inside, grab my gun, and try to apprehend whoever was inside. Taking a deep breath, I slowly unlocked the door and creaked it halfway open. I was instantly hit with a powerful, ghastly odor that made me want to puke. It smelled like something had been decaying in there for quite some time. Ignoring it, I cautiously proceeded to the kitchen to grab the gun I kept hidden in the top drawer. Quickly grabbing it, I hit the lights. To my surprise, the first thing I noticed were several pizza boxes and takeout bags scattered across the ceramic tiles. This struck me as rather odd because I knew I didn't order any takeout that day. I also noticed that there were food-covered footprints leading directly into the living room. Someone was definitely in here, and it looked like they were in a hurry to remain hidden from me. I slowly made my way into the living room with my gun at the ready. The footprints led right next to the boarded-up wall that was stationed at the other side of the room. There were a couple of half-broken planks in the middle of it that I hadn't gotten around to fixing yet. Very carefully, I walked towards the wall for closer inspection. My heart was beating with every inch I took. I stopped walking around a few feet away from it and began closely examining it. I couldn't make out anything inside, so I moved my head even closer to search for any signs of life. Again, nothing was completely visible, as it was pitch dark inside. So this time, I pulled out my phone and put it in the wall and turned the screen on. Suddenly, out of nowhere, I saw two amber red eyes staring directly at me. My heart dropped like a rock. I quickly stumbled backwards, trying to keep my balance. A sudden rush of adrenaline swiftly filled my entire body. I quickly spoke in the most intimidating voice I could muster up. "If you don't get the hell out of there right now, I swear to God I'll blow your brains out," I exclaimed. Silence subsequently followed. I was half expecting some demented lunatic to rush out from there and attack me out of nowhere, so I prepared myself for an epic battle. "Didn't you hear me? I am not messing around!" But before I could finish my threat, I was interrupted by a faint sobbing coming from within the wall. The intruder took a deep breath and then spoke in a soft tone. "Please, don't hurt me. I'm really sorry about what I've done," the intruder replied. The voice sounded like it belonged to a frightened little girl, around the age of maybe 13. This wasn't really the dramatic response I was expecting. I lowered my gun as the tension in the room quickly shifted to that of confusion. "Jesus, kid, you nearly scared me half to death," I said. "Who are you and what are you doing in here?" There was no response. It seemed like my initial reaction might have shook her up a bit. "It's okay, you can tell me. I promise I won't hurt you." I slowly backed away from the wall to assure her that I was no longer a threat. "See?" After a brief moment of silence, she replied once more. "My name is Maple," she said in a jittery voice. "I didn't mean to cause you trouble. I only wanted to get away from my mean parents." "Maple?" I paused for a minute, trying to recollect where I'd heard that name before. Then it hit me. Maple was the little girl that had gone missing in the area several weeks ago. The media reported that she had allegedly run away from home after her parents had physically abused her last Christmas. She must have slipped in my apartment when I forgot to lock the door that day. At that moment, I felt genuinely sympathetic, mostly because I've dealt with quite a few runaways in my line of work. Poor thing must have been scared to death. I guess when I ran out of food, she decided to break into my neighbor's apartment and help herself to their leftovers. She probably dropped all of it on the floor and made a break for it once she heard me come up to the door. I remembered at this point, there was a police car parked right outside of the building. I figured that I should first try to comfort her before calling the cops over. "It's okay, sweetie. Everything's going to be all right," I assured her. "Just please come out so I can make sure you're okay." She suddenly stopped sobbing and became quiet. Dead silence filled the room as I anxiously awaited a response. She was almost starting to freak me out a bit. After about a minute passed, she finally said something. "Okay, but could you first put the gun on the floor and come a little closer? I need help getting out." Her voice sounded slightly deeper this time. The sudden shift in tension kind of threw me off at first. I wanted to comply with her demands, but I had this strange, eerie feeling deep inside that something was off. At the time, I couldn't make out what it was, though. Giving in to my paranoia, I thought it was best if I just left her there while I went to go get help. "Oh, actually, just wait there, Maple. I'll be back soon with the—" "Wait, don't go!" she interrupted in a surprisingly loud and desperate plea. The sudden outburst made my whole body flinch. "You can't leave me here! My ankle, it hurts really, really badly. I think I twisted it and I slipped on the floor. I don't think I can get out on my own. You have to get me out of here right now. This place is really scary." I hesitated for a moment. Believe me, I wanted nothing more than to help her out, but there was something about her tone that made me feel like she wasn't completely telling me the truth. My intuition's usually pretty good at judging whether or not someone was lying, so I was inclined to follow my gut feeling. "I'll only be a couple minutes. Hang in there, kiddo. I promise I won't be long." I quickly ran out of the apartment before she could say another word. After a brief elevator ride down, I sped across the hall, out the spinning doors, and into the freezing weather. To my relief, I found a slightly chubby officer talking to his slim partner right across the street from me. I ran towards them, eager to tell them everything that had gone down. Before I could make it halfway there, however, I froze. My heart sank as I remembered something that will ever send a chill down my spine. I couldn't believe I hadn't realized this until now. That couldn't have been the same missing girl, because last night she was found murdered a couple blocks away. Her lifeless body was discovered stuffed inside the wall of a vacant apartment. It was all over the news this morning. Struck in terror and confusion, I was left nervously wondering just who the hell was hiding in my walls this entire time. I wasted no more time as I rushed to the police and frantically told them everything like a nervous wreck. At first, they thought it all sounded a bit sketchy, but after I persisted for a few more minutes, they were finally persuaded to follow me and take a look. Without catching my breath, I ran back to the apartment with the officers closely following behind. We made it to my living room and I showed them where the intruder was hiding. The chubby officer told me to step back as they both drew out their guns and pointed them at the wall. "This is the police. I want you to get out from there right this instant and put your hands on the ground." The officer's demands were met with silence. "You have 5 seconds to comply or else I am dragging you out." Still, nothing. The slim officer nodded, cueing his partner to go in. His partner pulled out a flashlight and slowly walked towards the wall with his gun still drawn out. I anxiously watched as he made his way to the wall and put his head inside. "Did you find anything?" the other officer asked. "No, it's all clear," he replied. "But I can tell someone's been hiding in—" But before he could finish his sentence, he paused. He put his head deeper in for a closer inspection. "Hold up. I think I see something." Judging by the surprise in his voice, I had a feeling that he was about to discover something very disturbing. I could feel it in my bones. "What is it?" his partner called out. The chubby officer took his head out of the wall and looked at his partner with a shocked expression. I think I can see a couple of bodies inside." Those words made my entire world turn upside down. I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you sure about that?" the slim officer asked. "Yeah, I am sure of it," he exclaimed. "Oh my God, I have never seen anything like this in my entire life. These bodies, they look so mutilated. Just what the hell happened here?" The unsettling thought that I had just stood feet away from human corpses made my stomach turn. The powerful stench of decaying flesh made me want to puke my guts out. I knew right there and then that whoever had been hiding in my walls this whole time was definitely not a little girl. "Help me break down this wall. One of them could still be alive." The slim officer put his gun back in his holster and walked towards the wall. I watched from about 15 feet away as they both started breaking down the old planks one by one. They quickly tore off 3 rows of them with ease while blood started pouring out in excessive amounts. Suddenly, out of nowhere, several lifeless, dismembered bodies fell right off the wall and onto the floor. My eyes grew wide in shock. Most of their flesh looked like it had been violently bitten off, and their mutilated faces were completely unrecognizable. The disturbing thought of the immense pain these victims must have suffered through was simply too much to take in. Upon taking a closer look at the type of clothes they had on, I made a chilling realization of who they were. They were all food deliverers from several nearby restaurants. I could barely make out the restaurant logos on their violently shredded and blood-soaked shirts. I wanted to look away from the gruesome sight, but there was something above the bodies that caught my eye. It looked like there was something written in blood on the inside of the wall. At first, I couldn't make out what it said through the darkness of the room, so slowly, I walked closer to read it more clearly. My entire body shook to its very core the instant I realized what it said.
You're lucky you didn't do as I asked,